Welcome everybody. P&Z meeting Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. Roll call.
All right, it is 6:01. All right, here we go. Bill Marin is not here. Kyle Oberketter is not here. Eric Bozick is not here. Rob Levitt
Is here.
Cindy Hirschfield is not here. Katie Hostetler
Here.
Mike Horvath is not here. Bob Kaplan
Is here.
and Ben Firestein.
Is here.
Excellent. Thank you. You have a quorum.
Minutes in our packet. Anybody have changes, comments, or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Great.
All in
Discussion.
favor? I will abstain since I was not here.
Okay, great. Okay.
Moving down to our first item on the agenda, Eagle County referral, Crown Mountain Park Planned Unit Development, PUD amendments.
Sarah Nadolny is going to present for us.
I will introduce here with Rebecca Wagner here with, she's the Executive Director of Crown Mountain Park. Crown Mountain Park Recreation District. We have some other staff folks that are here as well. We have Nate Kinziger, who is the Park Manager, and Leroy Durox is the Board President. And this application is being represented by Land Studio with Doug Pratt, who is also here in the audience to answer any questions that you may have. So this item is for a referral letter, actually. We're just making a referral to Eagle County regarding the comments that, or with any comments that you may have regarding this application. So Eagle County has provided the town with the opportunity to provide the referral comments, and this is an opportunity in accordance with an intergovernmental agreement that was signed between the town and Eagle County in 2008. And it involves proposed amendments to Crown Mountain Park's PUD. Crown Mountain Park is located within Eagle County, who leases the land to the Crown Mountain Park Recreational District, which is why this is in front of you today. So staff has reviewed all of the materials that were provided, including the narrative, the Crown Mountain Park Master Plan Summary Report, as well as the PUD Guide Compare document. These three items have been included within the packet, and there have been additional materials that have also been reviewed online. And I have just provided a summary in the memorandum, but just to look at this map, which is a little washed out, I guess, here, maybe a little bit better up on the screen. This is part of the Crown Mountain Park Master Plan Summary Report and does kind of indicate the uses that will be anticipated for the site or any changes to the Crown Mountain Park area. Just in summary, they are proposing to add a future leased area, which is kind of down the southern portion here, as James got the cursor on here. There's a proposed expansion of uses and more accurately memorializing the existing uses. And these detailed changes can be found in Exhibit D to your packet, which is that PUD Guide Compare Doc. And includes a myriad of things such as an expansion of the pond and wetlands. We're talking about an aging well amenities expansion, enhanced wayfinding, splash pad, trampoline, recreation center, and more.
Can I just make one little change to the site map? I'm not sure if this is the most up-to-date map. The wildlife habitat area is actually the expansion of the future leased area. The future leased area on this map is the Forest Service property, just to be clear, if that makes sense.
What's the future leased area on the map?
It's on the
Bottom map.
That's not part of Eagle County's land. That's the Forest Service property that is for sale.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I got that out of the packet materials. Well, anyways, so staff believes that the proposed uses are consistent with that which can be expected to be found at Crown Mountain Park. but also believes that this is an opportunity to discuss some, for the P&Z to be able to discuss some things with Eagle County or impress upon some things with Eagle County. The applicant has added language agreeing to implement a traffic count every 3 years and complete an updated traffic study if warranted, given the expansion of uses on the site. And staff does believe that this is a good thing to get in front of Eagle County to ensure that traffic impacts from additional uses would be studied and mitigated for accordingly. So staff has drafted a letter from the P&Z indicating as much. And James, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So this is a letter that's been included in the P&Z's packet for consideration to be sent. There is down on where it's yellow there and crossed out. We did have a little discussion with the applicant a little bit earlier today and have agreed to change the wording so that it does read a little bit differently. Instead of reading off the screen, I'll read it here. It initially had said, while the town P&Z does not object to the proposed uses as outlined generally within the draft PUD guide, the language does not object to has been stricken out. And it now reads, while the town P&Z is generally supportive of the proposed uses as outlined within the draft PUD guide. So it just kind of gives it a little bit more, maybe a little bit of nicer language and, reads more of supported of the general uses. And so that just really ensures that Eagle County requests that Eagle County ensure that traffic impacts are appropriately mitigated for. And again, that's something that was discussed within the application, but felt that it was an opportunity for Basalt to give that nod to Eagle County, saying that this is something that we do find important because we know that we recognize the impacts it could have in our town. So I'm going to turn this over to Becky if you have anything you'd like to add at this point before discussing with the P&Z.
Yeah, I think, the reason why our board and our staff, and honestly, Eagle County, we wanted to redo the PUD is because our community has changed so much in the last, 5 to 10 years since we last amended this in 2012. In 2012, we had a really large 160,000 square foot rec center that really consumed majority of what was going on in the PUD. A lot of the things in the PUD were very restrictive. To give you an example, AVSC came to us 2 years ago. They wanted to put in a single trampoline at Crown Mountain Park. Because it wasn't a use by right and not considered a playground structure, we still have a $200,000 trampoline sitting in our garage that we wanted to put into the ground. But we can't do it because it's not part of our PUD. So just, so flexibility, diversifying, being able to provide what the community is wanting and needing is something that we want to be able to tackle. And that's why we decided to update this PUD. Not, other than the language, it's just we added some use by rights to the language. And made the site map more flexible. That's one reason why you'll see that indoor space in hashes. That used to be where the rec center was, but it allows for us to change with whatever the community wants in the future, if that makes sense. Nate, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, really the goal here is like you said, is to just have a little bit of flexibility to develop Crown a little bit. There's nothing significant in the plans. We are looking at under a 15,000 square foot indoor training facility, and we're looking at outdoor synthetic turf. We pulled the big rec center, the historical rec center, out of this, so no significant changes. But like we said, we found ourselves restricted a lot of the time in what we wanted to do, and AVSC is a perfect example. They were going to fully fund a tramp for athletes to train on, and it's sitting in our garage for 2 years. So it'll probably be about a 3-year process to get that thing in the ground. So we see that as being an unsuited challenge for what we are. We're park and recreation. It's our job. It's what the land was set up to do. So we're just simply looking for a little bit more flexibility with moving forward.
And, in the past, and we had we had a great conversation with these guys at 3:00. There was this, I don't know, Crown and Basalt were always separated. What we want to do is start working with you guys to create amenities for the community and start working as a team, because I think we can be more powerful as a group. So when we submit something to county, we really want to show the county that we're now working as a team to provide amenities to the community, and we would really love to have like a positive backing from you guys and support in what we do. I think in the past 10 years, we've proven to bring the community, I mean, we have 500,000 visits annually. I mean, the amount of use at the park has gone up 40%. I mean, we have, on a given night in the spring and fall, we have 400 kids playing. In the future, if we could look at connectivity between Basalt and Crown, whether it's through your connection to get kids to the park and just keep bringing more and more use to the park, I think it's critical for mental and physical health in our area. So just some things to kind of throw on your radar.
Yeah, we really want to urge you guys to let's start talking about getting in the same room together and having conversations about what we're capable of together. Crown's become a significant gathering place for our local community. We also have a world-class bike park now. It's one of the best in the nation. So when you look at after-school programs, that is a hot topic for our community. Crown Mountain Park is an after-school program in so many ways. The bike park is an after-school program. Team sports, a lot of the things that happen there and what can happen there. So we would really love to just start having this conversation. Of course, this is a conversation with council as well, and it's good to see Rick here. But we really are trying to announce to the whole community that we really want to start bringing more to the table in the Mid-Valley and what we can provide our community and our kids and our youth and all of it. There's so much potential at Crown. It's really still a raw canvas. It's an open space, 130-plus acre park. There's no facilities. There's no indoor facilities at all. So there's so much we can accomplish, and we think it's time. It's long past due to start having the conversation together.
So if I may, this has not been scheduled yet before the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission. Hopefully I got all those words correctly. But it will be, to be announced, that will be scheduled and it will be going forward as a public hearing. And we are offering this to the Planning and Zoning Commission for your recommendation tonight. You can choose to direct staff to transmit the letter as written. You could make changes to the letter that you feel are appropriate, and direct staff to send that version of the letter to Eagle County. We did get an extension, so the Eagle County referral comments are due tomorrow. So with that, it was a very quick turnaround. So happy to entertain any questions that you may have or have for the applicant.
I'm just going to ask one about the timing. So is this not going to go in front of council? Or has it?
This will not, generally, typically, historically, referral comments have been the matter of P&Z, have come from the P&Z.
Okay. Anybody have questions?
I have a few clarification questions. Could you bring the map back up?
Yeah.
On the screen? So that, I want to make sure I'm correct. The indoor expansion area is on the bottom, that sort of triangular piece.
Yeah, when you enter into the park, it's on the right side. The dog, I'm trying to think. It starts where the native is before you get to the turf by the volleyball area.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the indoor facility. When they ran the studies back in 2012. That was the #1 location for an indoor facility in the Mid-Valley, and they looked at 28 different locations in Basalt and near Crown, and that was the spot. So we kept it there, so it really isn't different from what was on our original PUD. It's the same thing.
Okay.
The yellow building in back is that abandoned building. Do you see that back there, that yellow, like T? That's the abandoned building back there. We did add that to the PUD if there was ever a need for services in that building. But right now, we're not anticipating using that building for anything.
That building is an old tree propagation site. It's been abandoned for 60 years. The building is actually in really good shape. It was built as a bomb shelter. The roof is caving in. Eagle County has talked about bulldozing it. And I don't know how well that'll go over with the local community, but it's a liability to them currently. But it is about 17,000 square foot of building that is potentially going to be bulldozed.
Would the proposed traffic study also make sure there's sufficient parking for any further developments, or is that a separate piece?
Do you wanna touch on that?
Hi, my name's Doug Pratt. I've been working with these guys, as you can tell, they know recreation way better than I do as a planner. So, but in terms of traffic, there is the commitment to do a traffic count, which could ultimately lead to a traffic study, which I think was kind of the context for your question. The parking requirements will also be met every time if a use or a structure is proposed, then the parking requirements will be met for that use. We do have outlined on our master plan potential future parking areas, and recognizing some of the shortfalls on parking right now, there are plans in the immediate future, even without adding additional uses, to add additional parking. Parking is a use by right in the existing PUD. So, we're utilizing that tool right now to plan for parking fairly immediately. Plans are shaping up right now for new parking areas to address the needs for parking at the park.
Okay.
We have 62 spots going in that Ben designed for us. So,
Perfect.
Not here.
he's not here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben.
Okay, thank you.
My question is with that item 7, or it looks like we're granting a blanket approval for future development, right? Whether it's a rec center or whether it's housing. And is that accurate from the letter?
They're talking about the uses by right, or Rob,
Right.
that do not require
Right,
additional
correct.
design reviews or studies unless indicated. And
The uses by right, and tell me if I'm wrong, Doug, over 15,000 square feet go through a whole design review
So
process?
that would be a limited impact review process. It's what Eagle County calls limited review process.
That's through Eagle County.
Yes.
For Eagle County.
We would be referral, and are we waiving that right?
we are not taking, I guess, issue with the design review studies, but we are saying, kind of as a blanket thing, that anything that we believe may require additional studies, such as traffic studies, should not be waived. That's what we're requesting through this letter.
Rob, that's a good question. We're talking ahead of things a little bit regarding anything about a facility. If that were to hit the scene, that would come to your table, I think, later on. Right now, specifically, we're talking about the PUD and any issues you guys might have with the new language of the
To
PUD.
But not to actual development.
That's
That would still come before us.
Yeah, so these are one of the discussions we had as staff is that there's right now, the way the PUD is designed is that there's a design review. So it would come to us to architecturally critique what the buildings look like. And quite frankly, we're not really interested in critiquing what happens architecturally on the property. The uses, for sure, because like these conversations that we're having, like is the parking met, traffic study being considered? But unlike being in a neighborhood where is the architectural style of that facility going to impact my property value? Probably not, because there's not a house next door to it. So it's really the difference of design versus use.
So we're allowing it to be put into the PUD, but if it actually happens, it'll still come to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The building.
Okay. That was my biggest question. So what would you like us to, the three of us, to vote to send the letter as?
You can send it as is. If you want to put stronger language in it, we super support this. I'm just kidding. Well, I'm not, but you are welcome to do that. And if there's something you're concerned about, you could put that in there too. But if you feel strongly that generally you like where this is going, yeah, we're looking
Well, I
for.
appreciate your efforts to bring recreation to the Mid-Valley,
Absolutely.
and I will entertain a motion if anybody has one.
I will make a motion.
Could you, and also just include that with staff's updated language, if you don't mind?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve the letter with staff's updated language.
I agree. It's a great asset for the community, and we welcome the growth. And
I'll take that as a second.
yes, it's a second. Excuse me.
Thank you.
We'll vote on
Mhm.
it.
All in favor?
Hands, all in favor?
Mhm.
Aye.
There it is.
Abstain.
3-0.
Thanks, all.
And so you asked if it would go to council. We actually have a regularly scheduled post meeting tomorrow. So while post won't make a recommendation on the referral letter because that's not standard, they'll get the same update. So more town entities will be updated. And quite frankly, Post has updating a 5-year capital improvements plan in their work plan for this year. So this is important information, whatever's going to happen at Crown Mountain, to help configure that plan as well. Okay.
Just a question about related. What is the status of the Forest Service land? I know it's for sale.
There has been little movement on that. I think that, Ben probably knows better actually, but I think that the Farm Bill stalled or it changed so that I think there's no movement to be able to purchase it.
That's true at this time.
Okay. Yeah, I was right.
They would be an obvious purchaser.
The counties, it needs to
County.
be Eagle or Picken County who had partnered together for the opportunity and made an offer
For
to
housing.
the Forest Service to purchase the properties. That's
Okay.
why, that is exactly why, and I'm sorry I didn't think of that when you asked the question, but when she pointed out that that area was leased land from the Forest Service, that was part of why that clarification was important.
Next item of public hearing, amendments to Part 3, Section 3B of the Basalt Community Housing Guidelines to update the town's affordable housing cash in lieu fee amounts.
Yeah, thank you. Let me please share my screen here. This is a public hearing on amendments to Part 3 of the Community Housing Guidelines to update the town's affordable housing fee in lieu amount. As background, the cash in lieu is included in the town code as a method of mitigating for affordable housing. And in order to use cash in lieu, it's at the discretion of the town council. It is really only used on projects where a portion of a deed restricted unit is required and it is either not desired or not possible to have a deed restricted unit on the site. So it's limited applicability. It's only been used 1 or 2 times over the last 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So cash in lieu is listed as the lowest preference in terms of mitigation methods in the town code, but it's required by law that there is a cash in lieu option. So the cash in lieu amount hasn't been updated since 2015. And so as part of the affordable housing study and the work that Economic and Planning Systems, EPS, has done for the town, they had it as part of their scope to calculate the cash in lieu fee using the legally acceptable method that's kind of industry-wide. And it's based on the gap between the median free market home price and the maximum affordable housing prices for the various categories. And so, as you can see in the proposed language that's included in your packet, it's a pretty large increase from 2015. But staff thinks that that is positive as it helps kind of discourage developers from proposing to use the cash in lieu option since the town would rather have actual deed-restricted units instead of cash in lieu because it's somewhat difficult for the town to turn cash in lieu into actual dwelling units. So this evening, staff would suggest asking questions of staff, taking public comment, and making a recommendation to council if you're comfortable Staff would recommend a motion to forward recommendation of approval on the adjustments to the town council. And we'd welcome any questions you have.
You stated this has been used very rarely in the past
Yes.
dozen years or so, okay.
Yeah, I can only remember twice in basically the last 20 years.
Does this allow for a hybrid system where a portion is paid in lieu and a portion is provided?
The council could allow for that as part of the discretion that they have in the town code. Usually when there's a portion of a unit left over, it's covered by another full deed restricted unit being built on the site. And that's kind of the town's preference in most cases. But there have been a couple instances where cash in lieu has been allowed. Specifically, the car wash in Southside, which was approved but not built, is one of those rare instances. And I think the thought on that one was it was a very little amount of employee generation because it was an automated car wash, and it wasn't felt to be a good mix to have an affordable housing unit with a car wash.
Is this public as well?
It is, yeah, public hearing.
Does anybody have any other questions for James? I mean, everything else has gone up since 2015. It seems like that should too,
It's-
right?
It's gone up quite a lot. Those numbers were created by a consultant that y'all use.
Economic planning systems.
Yeah.
Big number.
I'm curious as to why Category 5 is so much lower than Category 4. It feels like there's a nice cadence there, and is that because Category 5 is so infrequently used?
No, Category 5 has a big jump from Category 4 in terms of the maximum AMI level.
Yep.
So that's, the higher you get on the AMI level, the less subsidy there is
that's what I thought.
for a unit. So that means the cash in lieu amount would be less for Category 5 than Category 1.
But the project is still required to meet the 120% average.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that doesn't change.
That makes sense.
Katie, any questions?
Nope, all good.
Do we have people listening?
Doesn't look like we have anybody online.
Sarah, any questions or comments? Can that end the public hearing, or do you want more formal?
No, that's
Fine.
official.
Okay.
That's fine.
I guess we could entertain a motion.
I guess we can. I move to accept as submitted by staff.
Second?
You're back, right?
Yes, I'm back.
He's back.
All in favor?
Big number.
Thank you.
Back on the time schedule.
Doing good.
Next item, 5A, public hearing code amendments to Chapter 16 zoning of the town's municipal code, and for the purpose of considering mutual code amendments to Chapter 16-203, renting of rooms and housing units, and Appendix C to establish a short-term rental fee.
Yeah, thank you. Staying in the code amendment realm here, this is a public hearing to consider code amendments to Town Code Section 16203, which is the short-term rental section of the Town Code, as well as to Appendix C, which is the schedule of fees for the town, and it would be to establish a short-term rental regulatory fee. And, you know, as background, as part of the Economic and Planning Systems EPS contract, which they did the housing study for the town, they were also contracted to do a housing report and set up a legal nexus for the town to potentially establish a short-term rental regulatory fee. as the town council was interested in having short-term rentals better mitigate their impact on the town as well as the town's supply of affordable housing. And so EPS provided a legal nexus report that's included in your packet that concludes that the town could enact a fee on short-term rentals of up to $5,064 per bedroom on an annual basis. This fee would need to be placed in a dedicated fund and used for the creation of affordable housing. So the proposed code amendments that you have in your packet would amend the code to add an annual fee of actually $2,532 per bedroom on an annual basis, which is half the maximum amount that EPS provided in their analysis could be levied on short-term rentals. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, felt it appropriate to add the fee at half the amount that could be added legally and monitor the impact that the fee has on the number of short-term rental licenses the town gets over the next year or two to see if the fee would need to be adjusted. Additionally, BAC thought it important to add an exemption on the short-term rental fee for essential employees that live and own free market units in the town, as an essential employee is defined in the town's community housing guideline. They indicate that a first responder, a public works or utility professional, or a teacher would fall into that essential employee definition. And so if they owned a free market residence and chose to rent that residence for less than 60 total days in a year, they would be exempt from the fee. And Bach kind of saw this as helping essential employees be able to maintain their housing and their ownership of a residence in the town. And the teacher example came up quite a bit. If a teacher, works all year teaching and they would like to rent their short-term rental, their residence as a short-term rental for part of the summer to help them offset their mortgage, Bach thought that was appropriate as an exemption. So that has been built into the proposed language that you have in your packet. Staff is accepting of having the exemption, but we don't think it will be utilized very much because there really aren't very many essential employees that actually own a free market residence in Basalt. But there could be a couple. So the proposed code language reflects Bach's recommendations. So this evening, staff would recommend you ask questions of staff, take public comments because it is a public hearing, and provide P&Z discussion. And ultimately, staff would recommend making a recommendation to council. It should be noted that staff does have information on what other communities are doing. A lot of other communities are doing either a mix of providing additional taxes or doing a regulatory fee. In order to do additional taxes, you have to go to the voters, whereas establishing the regulatory fee is simply a code amendment. Additionally, staff has additional information on how much rentals are going for in the Basalt area. If P&Z would like that information, we just didn't know how deep P&Z wants to analyze the amendments. So staff would entertain any questions you might have.
Go ahead. I have a few, but go ahead.
Was there a projection to how much revenue this would bring in?
The projection was that we currently have 44 short-term rental licenses for 2024. And so we don't have an actual projection on the fee, but it would be based on the 44 licenses we have to kind of give you a magnitude. We don't know,
Bedrooms each, roughly $5,000.
yeah,
Okay.
we don't exactly know how many bedrooms are in each of the short-term rental. That was not a data point that was collected under the town's prior software. We do have new software that allows us to pick that up when they do their updates for 2025.
And where does that the funds collected go?
We would establish a dedicated fund that could only be used for affordable housing creation.
The current registration fees, where do they go?
The current registration fees go back into the town's general fund to be able to keep the licensing program going.
Yeah, because right now it's a basic business license and sales tax license.
We do have a 4% lodging tax in addition to that.
How were the penalties calculated? It feels like it doesn't cover the cost of your man-hour to deal with the problem.
We have the new software that we just got up and running here recently. And so that software does a lot of the work for us. On a quarterly basis, we usually have the software run to try to pick up any short-term rentals that we don't have a license for. And so it actually even uploads a letter. So our staff time on doing enforcement is pretty limited.
I have a concern and a question is, have you, the largest percentage growing, fastest growing portion of our population is over 55.
Sure.
Have you considered that this may be hurting some of our over 55 residents? And I know, as an example, I have a friend who lives in Eagle County, not in incorporated Basalt. He's been in the valley for 10 years, is semi-retired, leaves for 30, 45 days a year and rents their place out. And it helps them maintain being here in a very expensive place in a time when insurance and taxes and costs to repair a house keep going up.
Sure.
And I'm concerned that trying to create affordable housing, we may be making it less livable for some of our community. So unless number C is taken out, I am opposed. I think it should be available to anybody in the community that is a full-time resident, particularly since we have so many more older people who are by nature living on a fixed income in an environment where costs are going up.
How do you differentiate that case to someone whose primary residence is also here, but they also have multiple residences elsewhere? And
Number B states that they have to state, and it has to be accepted that this is their primary residence.
so that allows them to be here for 180 days, 160 days out of the year?
You know, it's where they pay taxes. I mean, we don't define what's that.
No, I just saying, you know, it's a blanket statement for a targeted approach. You know, at the end of the day, there's a break-even point with paying $2,500 or $5,000 a year versus what you could be collecting at, you know, $5,000 a week for a unit.
Yeah, and maybe you shorten it to 45 days from 60 days or something but I just have concerns that, I mean, I'm all for affordable housing and for creating funds and creating disincentives to short-term rental versus home, a primary residence, but I'm concerned that it may be too much.
Certainly, that's a discussion item that P&Z could have. These were the exemptions as they were recommended by Bach. So Bach had a lot of discussion about, who should be exempted, and they didn't all agree on who should be exempted, but the majority agreed on these three qualifications for exemption.
Just so I understand, they would have to meet A, B, and C to be exempt, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, when you read the methodology from the consultants and, you know, who's spending how much money in town and what the value of that is, I sort of overlooked the key factor of having local people live in their town, and how do you put a price on that? And it sort of goes back to how you feel about short-term rentals versus encouraging locals to stay, and how do you do that? But I sort of ended up disregarding their numbers because they're missing what I thought was the most important point of having local people live in their towns and go to the schools and the restaurants and shops and be part of a community. And I don't know how you value that, but it sort of morphs into a much broader conversation than, you know, this one particular amendment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if now's the time or place, but I think that we should have that conversation.
So you're not thinking of this amendment in a vacuum. One of the many strategies that came out of that affordable housing needs update is the deed restriction incentive program. So it's not something that's probably going to be accessible largely to everybody because the town has limited funds, but it is something that would 100% be almost targeted, if you will, at retirees and that kind of age group, because it's to purchase housing and to give a financial incentive for homeowners to put a deed restriction on their house, which could help people move, do repairs, maintain, all of those things, that exact thing. So there's a balance in there of different strategies,
Right.
for sure. Not that, just so that you're not operating in a vacuum on this one topic. It's a big conversation for sure.
Bob, to your credit, not to disagree, but just to have the discussion. You know, if the majority of our population is retiree, because that's an inalienable fact, and they're holding on to the properties and looking for cash outcomes for those properties, you know, at the end of the day, 2,000 to 5,000. I'm not talking about folks on fixed incomes and all of those things that we're trying to assist with. But at the end of the day, 2,000 to 5,000 versus the income potential of that 60-day stint. I think we're, you know, missing the mark there if we're concerned about it. $2,500, $5,000 fee for a year.
$2,500 per bedroom.
Per year.
per year, so.
$5,000 and it's annual, right? And
Yeah.
it's regardless of how often you rent out your place.
Right, so if you're not renting, what we've heard from other communities that have these in place is that if you're, and we've experienced this a little bit in Basalt, is that if you hold a license and the fee is more impactful and you don't rent it out, then you're probably not going to continue to get the license to rent it out. If you're a property that is rented out regularly and it's really making it worthwhile, you're probably going to continue doing it. Right now, what we experience, because the building department has to go and re-inspect short-term rental license holders every year to make sure that the property is still safe and it's meeting code. There are some entities that say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't do this at all. I don't want to renew this year because it's not worth $200 to me," which is what the fee is right now to do this.
Right.
And then we certainly have others that are making substantial amounts of income off of their things. And, you know, it's not for us to say like, "Oh my gosh, you know, that property is really crushing it income-wise," because we don't know what their standings are. But we do know that just those fees alone, which are pretty basic right now, are
Right.
enough to deter people if they're not making money.
I guess I didn't state myself correctly. The essential employee is the part that I'm opposed to. That it should be available to more people. That the example of the person I mentioned should not have to pay, let's say it's a 3-bedroom home, $7,500 additional a year to lease it for 30 days.
And
And that's my concern. If I would be I'm not I'm in opposition to this as written. If section C would be taken out, I would be agreeable to it.
So is there a way to mold that to, because obviously if these are retirees that are in the community, you know, we can't talk about their income because it's potentially negligible.
They have to prove that this is their full-time residence.
Well, and maybe a little more data is helpful in considering it. Bach had some serious discussions about, you know, whether the fees would really be seriously impactful to people. And so there isn't data specific to the Basalt town limits, but there is data that is available to the general Basalt area, which includes some properties that are also up the frying pan. And so there's listings by annual availability. And so if you look at this graph, the majority of the short-term rentals that are available for a good portion of the year. And so it's kind of acting more as a short-term rental unit, and they don't actually use it as their primary residence in most of the cases that you see in the data.
Well, that shows a 60-40 split, right? Is that
Yeah,
1 to 90 days is 40%?
1 to 90, yeah.
Not to take off topic, I want to clarify something that James said and Michelle, you said there. And that's what I was referring to with my question about how did the fee schedule get written and it's not worth the man hours? It was the inspection portion that I saw, $100 for to re-inspect.
Yeah.
You know, that's Mitch or someone else from staff heading over, reviewing, walking a property, reviewing, coming back. Is $100 even realistic for the time that he has to put in to make that trip and back? That feels low to me. It feels very low to me.
Based on our fee schedule, it's on point. You know, planner hours, we get billed out at $85 an hour.
Very basalty.
It's an hour's work.
But it's a penalty. I mean, we're not trying to incentivize these people to get.
Well, actually,
The
Oh,
inspection.
the inspection's not a penalty.
no, it's just
It's required every year, and then the $500 one is for failure.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, the inspection is just to make sure from a health safety standpoint that carbon monoxide detectors are
There's not an illegal
working.
kitchen, or there,
Yeah.
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 Do those inspection fees match the building inspection fees that are in the code?
They're a little bit higher.
A little bit higher.
Yeah.
That's good news. Thank you.
Just $5,000 to rent out your place for, if you do it 1 weekend a year, I mean, it's a disincentive to Airbnb, right? To short-term rental, sorry.
Price per night.
I mean, right, the more you pay, the less likely you are to do it.
Yeah.
Is that what?
Right, but the regulation still says you can do it for, only 60 days or less a year.
For an exemption,
You
For
have
the
to.
exemption,
Exemption is,
all I'm talking about is who
It's a
can
full
be
exemption,
exempt. I want to
60
open I think the umbrella of who should be exempt should be a bit larger.
But they would be exempt if that person rented their unit for 61 days,
They would not.
continuous.
No, because they aren't an essential employee.
No,
I thought short-term rental comes with any rental less than 60 days in total.
but they can only do 60 or, did I read it correctly? You can only rent it out 60 days total a year to qualify for the exemption.
that's correct.
Yeah.
60 days total a year qualifies for the exemption.
Or less.
more than 60, you pay $5,000.
More than 60, nobody's exempt.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
you know,
I'm not sure that it's nobody. We.
Right, it's-
Yeah.
and Bach
LLCs.
also kind of explored what the average daily rate was to kind of get an understanding of, how much revenue was coming in from short-term rentals if people were doing it. And in the Basalt area, once again, this is not just for the Basalt town limits, but it's the best data we could get, has an average of $517 a night.
Right.
So Bob, your exemption starts at 55? You wanted a retiree?
No, I just think that it should be open to, it should be, not be open just to essential employees. Be open to anyone.
So maybe you'll make that motion when you guys get to that point and see who else is on board with you there.
The other parts that you can only rent for, to be exempt, you can rent for 60 days or less, total per calendar year. And you have to demonstrate to the town manager that the unit is the owner's primary residence. And then you could qualify for an exemption. That's all I'm saying.
That's it. So no age, no retiree, okay?
But then we're putting the onus on the demonstration to the town manager.
Well, that's the way it's written anyway.
Yeah, that's the way it works,
That's the way it works
regardless of
anyway.
whether
It's
you
right
take
here.
out city
Yeah.
or not.
So it's still the town manager who's judging the essential worker, or the essential worker is judged by how they are defined in the code,
Yes.
which is what working group?
So the definition of essential employees basically is full-time employees working for organizations that provide services or essential utilities, water, sewer, electric, gas, needed for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Examples of essential employees include, but are not limited to, the town utility and public works staff, police, firefighters, and teachers.
This might be a really dumb question, but if there already aren't that many anticipated exemptions being used, is there some alternative route that some person in a circumstance where they literally wouldn't be able to afford their home could go in order to receive exemption? Or would they need to absolutely meet all of the listed ones?
Well, currently, the way the language was drafted and recommended by Bach, there isn't another method, but if P and Z felt that was needed, you could add language.
So for another realm of examples, so in all of the communities that have short-term rentals, Basalt is part of the Colorado Association of Ski Towns, and we get data for comparables on fees, taxes, policies, and those sorts of things. And what we learned through that background data is that some areas that were in their first years of adopting these policies, like Steamboat, for example, Steamboat started with a very customized structure where units that were in a certain neighborhood by the ski lift had a certain pricing structure. Units that were over in more residential neighborhoods had a different permitting structure, and then units that were in the commercial core had a third permitting structure. Ultimately, they found that customization, because they wanted to allow the flexibility for different residents and businesses and that sorts of things, was actually, their words, not mine, because I don't work there, but was an epic failure. So they ended up standardizing the entire process because the exemptions got really difficult to administer in the different permits. So you would have someone in the residential neighborhood saying, well, I'm actually functioning the same as the residents in the commercial core, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so what you see across Colorado is that all of these systems are really, it's kind of, each one is a little bit different, but overall, it's kind of a one and done sort of deal.
So funny you mentioned Steamboat, because that's where my parents live, and they actually had someone on their street who ended up having to sell their home because when they standardized it, they couldn't no longer afford it. So I guess another potential option would be for people who are already using short-term rentals, like if we can implement something for existing people who need it, and then just make it standardized moving forward. I don't know if that's an option. I don't know.
Obviously, this comes, like you said, Michelle, with time and review and understanding, each individual case. It feels like Bach's intention, and Robert, Bob, the case that you're bringing up as well is, is it financially required for this person to utilize short-term rental income to continue to live here, or continue to keep the property, however that scenario works. And without having staff review their finances, is there even an option to define something? I feel like even reviewing finances gets too complicated.
If the house is owned by an LLC and is a full-time 365-day rental, I don't think I mind putting a fee on it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's a local person living in less than 60 days, I don't mind giving that person a break.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
I think that's who I'm kind of
If that
focusing on.
simplifies.
It's the person that once or twice a year leaves for maybe a month, and it helps them, make things meet. So maybe they're gonna make $25,000 on a 3-bedroom home for a month. I'm just throwing a number out there, and you're just taking away $7,500. So it's making it much less inviting. And like I say, we have a growing population of retirees and semi-retirees, and it ain't getting any cheaper to pay your insurance, your taxes, and your property repairs. So I just think we're, like I said, trying to help affordable housing. I think we're hurting another part of our population.
I agree.
Stay in their home.
I agree.
At the end of the day, this is a review by the town managers. That this exemption is required, is under their
Yeah, under their enforcement
enforcement.
administration.
So do we want to keep deliberating or vote on removing that, or what do we want to do? I move that we vote to remove section C and keep the language. Can I move that way?
If I may, it's a public hearing, so if we could please open the public comment and then go into that.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's open up public comment at 6:57.
We have nobody online, so
Let's close public comment at 6:58.
I have one question. If the units are deed restricted, does that prevent them from,
Yes.
The restriction.
Deed restrictions prohibit short-term rental.
and obviously every one of these units is subject to the covenants and the HOAs that they exist in as well, above and beyond this.
That is correct. There are some subdivisions that don't allow short-term rental at all. And so staff, when we receive a short-term rental license, we have to check to make sure their covenants allows for it.
Can I just take a step back on this one and ask how this came up, why we decided to craft an amendment?
It goes back to when we were doing the contract for EPS for the housing study. The council was interested in mitigating the impacts of short-term rentals, and were interested in how many short-term rentals we had. So staff figured out that data for them, and so they suggested looking at a regulatory
So is
fee.
this meant to be a disincentive for STRs, or is it meant to be a money-raising venture for affordable housing?
Yeah, so it's in most of the ski towns acknowledged that short-term rentals have a negative impact on the availability of affordable housing. And it is, the point that you're making is very valid. However, the impact of short-term rentals is seen not to offset the ability for cost of living benefits for residents. And so creating funds from short-term rental fees is seen as a way to support affordable housing. So it's one of many strategies.
Can we ask how Bach voted on the inclusion of C?
Yeah, it was 3-1.
I think so, yeah. It was a heavy discussion, and again, it's a recommendation as well, so.
And the one that voted against it didn't like C, so he was supportive of A and B in the exemption.
Were the A and B the recommendations of EPS in their report, or is that staff's recommendations?
No, that's
Or
Bach-
Jeff's recommendations?
Bach's evaluation. EPS didn't get into the recommendations for exemptions. They just calculated what the maximum fee could be on a legal basis.
Again, because they're generally not exemptions in other communities.
Mhm.
You made a motion. I think I would support it, Bob.
Okay. I move to strike, I need to go to it, excuse me. I move to strike number C of section IV, Roman numeral 4, to the proposed code amendment language.
And recommend approval.
And recommend approval of the code change based upon that, with that removal included.
I'll second it.
Okay, so then we have a vote.
Any further discussion?
No, I'm kind of torn, but no, I think
Oh,
I'm in
it's a tough
favor.
one. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
No, I'm in favor of no exemptions.
Very good. We will share your recommendation with council.
Are you in favor of
I'm in favor of no exemptions.
not C either?
Not C, not A, not B.
Okay.
Just if you're gonna be in the short-term rental, throw your cash in the pile. If you're gonna be making, $500 a night, I think we should disincentivize the short-term rental program.
Which was part of my broader conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's tough though, because like I know someone who's building a house in Stotts Mill right now, and the only way they can do it is by building an ADU below them. And I mean, they say, again, like I can't see their financials, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But they say the only way they could make it work is by having that short-term rental in order to make more than long-term rental. But you never know.
No, I stare at performers all day, and those things absolutely make sense in the income space. But if we're trying to incentivize our community to use the deed restriction program to take, put more inventory into housing and, disincentivize an aging population who is sitting on a lot of these properties, from just using them as ways to operate and gain cash, I think we just need to disincentivize it, and the modest amount of $2,000, $5,000, $7,000, it feels paltry compared to the amount of income,
But
you know, when rental is $5,000 a month.
exactly what we want would be to take that money,
Yeah.
give it to them to make up the shortfall, and rent the ADU to a full-time
Long-term.
local
Yeah,
essential
full-time
person.
local.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So you need to generate the revenue somehow,
Yeah.
but there should be how great to have a method in place, a pipeline where that ADUs used to be what was gonna save the local working population. And now they're going to STRs, which is exactly the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that you still will have to pay that additional fee if you rent it out more than 60 days a year. So the professional,
Long-term,
no, more than 60 days, am I reading it correctly? More than 60 days of cumulative short-term rentals.
Yeah, so short-term rentals,
This is for-
cumulative short-term, right, but if you do a year lease to a teacher,
It's not included.
no, I'm saying we should give the money to that person.
yeah, to clarify though, short-term rentals are leases or rents for less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days.
And so the exemption is if you do that cumulative for more than 60 days, then you're kicked into the fee.
Right.
The only thing I could see that's viable for the short-term rental is, you know, to incentivize people to come in and do shifts. You know, I think of a nurse coming in to do a shift here for, you know, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. You know, that could be an exemption, but again, I just think $7,500 is nothing compared to what you could potentially be bringing in.
Again, if it's, this is,
Every dollar counts, I agree.
okay.
Okay, commissioner comments and staff updates. What do you got for us, Michelle?
Well, it's January.
Three?
Dang.
Yeah.
Let's see, last week at town council, I had a Bach work session to update town council on our affordable housing efforts for the year, which include construction of the duplex in Stotts Mill, which is underway, land use entitlements and design for rugby field adjacent property in Willits, up to 14 to 16 units on that. And we've just started community outreach for the Willits Affordable Housing and Community Space Center across the street from Takah. So more to come on that. Those are super exciting. And then these code amendments are sort of the end of staff work on some of the affordable housing strategies. We are interviewing planning teams tomorrow to move forward our deed restriction incentive program, our ADU program, and several other affordable housing initiatives during 2025. So more to come on that. I like to look at the board over there to remind myself what else we have going on. Right now, we're really just kind of moving into some construction document work for things, so nothing really exciting to share at the moment. The town did hire our first community arts and public events position. I think I said it backwards somewhere in there, because we're calling it a PACE position. It kind of plays off of PAC and BPAC, the Public Arts Commission. So that position will be helping us full-time with the concerts, which is huge for me and everybody else, to keep things going and make everything smoother, as well as one of his first tasks is developing an arts consignment program for the town. So we're really excited about that, and that'll be rolling out soon.
Arts consignment?
Yeah, so, you know, in Carbondale, for example, along Main Street, there are different marble plinths that you see different art installations on. Those pieces are consigned by the town, so something along those.
Is that Scott that got the job?
No, his name is Brent Compton. Yep. And those are, I think, the big updates of the moment.
Yeah, I think Michelle was talking about the rugby adjacent field. You'll be seeing that sketch plan review as P and Z in late February to early March. So that's coming up.
I presume y'all have been reaching out to equity partners or groups to build those out,
Yeah, we're working through funding this year. Mhm.
funding? But the
Happy to take any
town does
leads.
not plan to build them themselves, build it.
No, we have a very limited budget from that bond
Right.
initiative. So we have what I would describe as matching funds for bigger investments.
Right. So you're looking for a developer,
Yeah.
essentially.
Notice a new fence across the street? They getting ready to clear the space?
They've worked through their approval documents. They don't have a permit yet. They're working towards it.
Is it asbestos-free?
It is asbestos-free. They did their asbestos mitigation,
The hurdle.
which,
Significant.
Which was substantial.
CDPHE has stamped it, we're good?
yes, we got the stamp.
Katie already gave us an exciting update. Anybody else? All right, who wants to make the last motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Favor?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you all very much.
In 11.